I think it's really been down to figuring out what my values, or understanding now what my life and like personal values are, and the things I want to do, and the things going back to that sort of lines of tech that I'm not interested in contributing to. I really understand more about what I feel good about doing, what my values are, and what I don't want to be contributing to. So yeah, but that's hard, because that's not always an easy path to riches and success and fame. But I feel good about what I'm doing, which I'm fortunate for.
Layoffs, ghost jobs, AI. These are unprecedented times. Trying to find a job in the professional world, especially the tech sector, has never been harder. It seems the social contracts around job seeking have been all but torn up in pursuit of profits.
At the same time, there are plenty of folks out there finding new careers every day, whether through strong networking, creative approaches to job applications, or just sheer determination. There are those who have gone through the long, difficult job hunt and found success on the other end.
I'm Jason C. McDonald.
And I'm Michael Tharrington. This is On the Board, where we interview everyday people who've successfully landed jobs during the discouraging employment landscape of the last 2 years.
No out-of-touch influencers and dubious pay-to-win schemes here, just real experiences and practical insights.
Hey Andy, we're excited to have you as a guest here at On the Board. Can you just start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your career journey thus far?
Yeah, good to see you both. My name's Andy Piper. I'm a techie. Actually, my degree is in history. I went to university back in the mid-90s. I did history, but I've always been interested in tech. And I found it very difficult at the beginning to immediately find a job that wanted to hire a history major out of university in the mid-90s to go do something with technology. But I did manage to find my way in there. I got a job at the UK Post Office at the time on like a management training scheme, where they would basically take anybody on any kind of degree program, or from any degree program. But that division that I was joining was their technology division. And so my first kind of roles were more or less help desk operator for people inside the UK Post Office's IT division, building support databases, answering questions from developers. And I kind of just moved myself in the direction of like, I want to write some code here, rather than I think there were 8 of us that all joined on the same program that were, being groomed to be future kind of management people. I guess, people that would run divisions of the company. And within 4 years there, they literally ran out of runway for me as a techie, because they were grooming me for management, and they had no sort of technology road path for me. So I managed to get a job at that point as an experienced hire at a little company called IBM. So they'd already, been business partners. They'd seen me working as a techie, hired me in there as a consultant. So I spent 10 years at IBM. And honestly, I've had a really fortunate career. I had that early lucky break of being able to find my way into a thing that I wanted to do, which was tech, from something which was a bit unusual, which was not tech. And then after IBM, I got kind of headhunted. Somebody called me and said, hey, we want somebody to come work on this Cloud Foundry thing that we're doing at this company called VMware. 2 years after that, I went and joined. Somebody called me up and said, hey, we've seen you on the internet and we'd like you to come and work for this company called Twitter. And I spent 7, 8, 9 years there. So yeah, that was all looking really great for a while, until it wasn't. That's kind of my background, I guess.
So when it started going towards the wasn't great, what was your experience then?
Yeah, so a man called Elon Musk bought the company and fired everybody, and that was bad. That was, I think lots of people at Twitter, I think still in the US and in other places, have got ongoing legal action for versions of their dismissal, right? So it wasn't good. It didn't happen in the way that we were told this acquisition was going to happen, and we were going to get certain benefits as a result and didn't get that. It was extremely sudden, Jason. I woke up one morning, had an email. In fact, we had it the week after the acquisition happened. We all had an email saying tomorrow morning you'll either have an email on your internal email saying you're still staying with the company for Twitter 2.0, or you're no longer required. And I woke up the following morning and had an email on my personal account telling me I'd been fired and my laptop was locked. So that was that. So that was pretty awful. I wasn't expecting it at all. I mean, I wasn't expecting to stay at the company because I didn't want to work there at that time, but I didn't expect it to happen in that way.
Can you talk about what you were doing there as well? Just like your position there, and kind of what specifically sort of what your day to day was like, and what it was like when you left.
That's a really good question. I just kind of skipped over it and said I was a techie. I've been a techie, right? So, let me just walk you through very quickly. Go back to IBM and forward again. So IBM, I spent 10 years, but I was a software consultant. So what that meant that I got to do was go and meet IBM customers who paid money for their software to help them to implement that software and fix a business problem. So that was a really good opportunity. It was terrifying because I wasn't super social at the time. I'd spent a lot of time the previous 4 or 5 years and my degree working with small groups of people who I knew very well, and suddenly I had to go out to different companies and different customers and meet new people each day. But I learned to draw pictures on whiteboards. I was kind of adapting my skills, and I got to learn a lot about different industries. So I worked in banking, media, retail for IBM customers. So that was really good. And then I also got to do some international travel as well. Then I got to go to VMware, and they hired me because they'd started to do some of this public speaking, some of these online videos, being on the internet, being social, as what they call a developer advocate. And that's what I did at Twitter as well. So that was very much kind of helping solve problems for people using the platforms, the code, fairly versatile. But at Twitter also, I was increasingly senior, so I was also doing a lot of the kind of outward-facing communications about the platform, involved in policy and regulation discussions, involved in moderation situations, all kinds of other things. So it was pretty varied, and also there was a big team of 20 or so people that I was sort of one of the more senior folks in. So I was helping them to onboard or learn or solve their own problems. So yeah, day to day was pretty varied. At the time that the layoffs happened, I was about to be running our developer conference, which didn't happen in the end. So that was all looking pretty exciting.
So obviously you had some job experience, some experience, I should say, looking for work. Prior, what did you find was different when you were looking for work after Twitter?
Yeah, well, again, I said it earlier, and I say it again. I've been really privileged, and I recognize that extremely. Look, I'm a middle-aged white guy in a developed country, and I haven't, both the job after IBM and the job after that at Twitter. So going into VMware and into Twitter, people reached out to me, so I kind of had an upper hand in that sense. They were tough choices for me to decide to go do, although the Twitter one was fairly easy because I was super excited. The other one was like, I'd spent 10 years at a company and was I ready to make a leap and do something different? So first of all, it was different for me because I was looking around, right? I hadn't been looking so hard before. And also I'd kind of lost my mission, lost my steam, lost my energy. At the time I left Twitter, I was really crushed. I'd spent 9 years there. It had been a big part of my life because I'd got my previous 2 jobs, both the VMware one and the Twitter one, by being on Twitter. Right, people could see what I was doing. It had really changed my life. I'd built this network of friends around the world on that platform. So it was really hard because I felt like I was cut off from my network, much of my network of people that I knew who'd helped me in the past, and also just really kind of beaten down by the whole process. So it was really tough, and I was lucky. I had a bit of savings from that from that layoff. It wasn't what we were told we were going to get, but I got some money from that. So I was able to take a bit of time out, and I'm glad I did. I sort of took, I originally kind of thought to myself, I'll take 6 months before I go actively looking, because I can survive for that period. And I recognize that not everybody's been in that position, especially in the US in particular. You don't have such generous terms as some folks outside do get, and I recognize that. So the first thing was having to go look. Secondly, trying to figure out what I was going to do next, because at about the same time, this whole developer relations thing started to, I won't say dry up, but companies were end of 22 starting to really look hard at their balance sheets, figure out where they wanted to spend the money, figure out what were the nice to haves, and developer relations was quite often seen as a nice to have, not an obvious revenue generator. It's more about relationship building, and those are longer term returns on investment very often, but harder to measure. So kind of developer relations became a bit more challenging to find roles in. And yeah, sort of just feeling, for me, I was just feeling very uprooted, lacking kind of a focus, knowing what to do next. So there was a period where at the beginning where I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll wait and see what comes my way. And then the fear of, oh crap, actually, I've got a wife, I've got a house, I've got expenses. I can't actually live on savings, and plus those savings were going to be, my retirement pot. It was pretty tough. Those were difficult things for me. I hadn't written a resume for ever. I mean, certainly for 15 years, I don't think I'd had to sit and write a resume. And again, look, I'm coming across super privileged because I recognize that I have been. But having to sort of reevaluate what skills I had, what I wanted to do next. I had a thing in my head that, I've been in industry, I've been working for 20 plus years. Therefore, I'm at a particular age. Therefore, I should be at a particular level and doing stuff looking for roles at this kind of level. And then one or two conversations I started to have where they were hiring probably a level down from where I was aiming. But I was answering questions or asking questions sort of at the next level up, about the business and the competitors and the structure and some of the things that maybe they weren't expecting to hear. Those conversations dried up pretty fast. They didn't continue because I don't think they necessarily had the energy or they just weren't looking for the kind of questions and the skills I was bringing, I guess. I don't know. I'm second guessing everything, even looking back on the conversations, right?
Yeah, that's a familiar feeling. Well, look, I'm curious when you found yourself back on the hunt. Yeah. You have a wide range of abilities. So how did you decide which direction to really push? Like where you're going to go? You mentioned DevRel as one space to push, community being another, and then maybe just also being an engineer or developer, a lead engineer. Did you push in all directions, or how did you choose which way to go, I guess?
Okay, so on LinkedIn, which I'm sure most people use, are on for better or for worse. They've got the feature where you can sort of specify the kind of role you're looking for, right? Or the kind of titles that you're looking for. So of course I was in there putting things like CTO because again, I'm like mid-late 40s. Look, this is where I expected to be there. And these are a set of skills I think I have. So I'm in there putting, I'm looking for CTO level roles. And you don't usually just like apply to CTO level roles. There's networks that exist of people introducing other people into those kind of roles. And plus I didn't really know what kind of company that would land me in. So I don't think that helped. In terms of what I was looking for, I was looking at other DevRel roles. And of course, people who knew me from that background were passing those kind of things my way. But sometimes they were for things that I wasn't at all interested in. And I've been, again, lucky that I've managed to find things that I've been passionate about or have been able to find passion in my career, particularly Twitter. It was just really tough to suddenly lose that passion and excitement.
Yeah.
So I was doing a few things. So I did some freelance work. So I ended up freelancing with a couple of open source projects that had some funding. And actually, sort of 18 months ago, I got a 1 day a week freelance gig with this project called Mastodon, which is a social media platform. And it's a nonprofit. It's funded entirely by user donations. And I'm an expensive resource. Again, if you look at where companies spend money, it's very often on the people. And I recognize that I'm one of the more expensive things on their balance sheet. So I got a 1 day a week gig with them, which was pretty flexible, but it was frustrating because it meant I couldn't actually commit to it as much as I wanted to. And it didn't also leave me the headspace to sort of properly go do job hunting or have a clear idea of what I wanted, right? Or which other direction I wanted to go in. I was still looking at sort of DevRel type roles, and then also expecting the chief technology officer role to land in my lap, which is naive, I think, but it's still it's an aspirational thing. I think that's the kind of set of skills that I can bring to a company in the future. But probably just sort of shopping myself around as CTO for hire was a bit optimistic.
Hey, you don't know until you try. So
fair enough, right?
You mentioned earlier how unsettling it was to be laid off, and I was reading something about how layoffs are up there in terms of trauma, right next to divorces and bereavements.
Yeah.
How did you process that?
It was really tough. I'm fortunate that that's the only time that's happened to me, and I know that there are people that that's happened to multiple times. I think I'm also hanging my sadness on the actual specific nature of that one takeover and massive gutting of the company, because of course it affected something like 75% of my colleagues in a 6,000 person or whatever it was company. And then, of course, I think the other thing that happened was, I think that layoff, the Twitter layoff, really kind of kicked off that whole wave in tech of companies really like slicing their workforce and cutting costs and finding other ways to prove to their investors that they could continue. So yeah, it happened to a lot of us at once, and then it's happened to a lot of us in DevRel at once. So how did I process it? Not well. And it really did take me at least a year before I really stopped being extremely angry and full of spite for that situation. I'm glad that I'm still upset about seeing what that individual has done to other companies and other places, right? But yeah, I mean, we've got to move on, and there wasn't a way back, right? So yeah, I don't think I processed it well at all, and I think being able to find something, both the open source community, actually, going back to open source communities that I spent time with in the past across a range of different technologies, and then finding the Fediverse, the Mastodon, that sort of open social space, even though I was only spending one paid day a week on it, that really sort of helped me to sort of think about what's different and what's possible. My mindset's really changed a lot in the last 3 years, because I've started to see the world very differently in the process of that layoff and that whole process, because I've worked for companies that have been very good to me, but now I recognize that they probably weren't being good to me for the sake of, because they were great, benevolent things. It's about the people, right? It's about the people that are there that can deliver the benevolence more than it is about the entity of the company. So,
Totally. Well, I've also been part of a big layoff before, and I'm curious, like, I know when it happened to me, there was a number of us, and it makes it harder in some ways because you know others are struggling, but also it gives you some community amongst,
Mm.
you know, the others that are leaving with you.
Yeah,
Did
yeah,
you have that with Twitter? When you
yeah.
left, did you have some other folks in your network, you know, some other folks you were working alongside that you could kind of build a network with afterwards and kind of think through it, process it together, and help each other to find opportunities? Do you have that sort of thing, or were you able to formulate something like that?
Yeah, yeah, we were lucky. The Twitter next the X Tweet network is very strong. It always was. Before I joined it, we could see that was going on. You know, as people moved on from the company through whatever circumstance. But yeah, we had really good support locally, collectively, not from the company. In the UK, there were a bunch of us that got together and would sort of one of our former HR colleagues would sort of give us some resume CV building workshops and those kind of things. So that was nice. And then there's a few folks that I've stayed in touch with. The interesting thing for me was when I was watching other people get work and start working again much more quickly than I did, because then it becomes a kind of competitive thing internally. It's like, oh crap, they're working already, and what am I doing? I'm just sitting here spending my savings.
It's tough.
And it is tough, but then also then there's the element of a different life stages, different. I don't have children, so I didn't have, you know, I've got myself and my wife to worry about, but I don't necessarily have the same responsibilities otherwise. So there's that. And in those cases, some of them maybe took roles that weren't so suited to them because they needed the security of an income again more quickly, and maybe then spent 6 months in that role and then moved on to something else, or started looking for something else because they realized that there wasn't such a great choice. So, yeah, I mean, I was lucky, and I've continued to be lucky with that network. I think now, nearly 3 years later, after that layoff, it's a lot more diverse. I don't know where I would be looking next because I don't feel as connected to that group of people as I did 18 months ago. So if I was to stop the role I'm in now, which is possible because it's a non-profit and relies on user donations, then it would be, I think, again, more challenging because I wouldn't have the same breadth of support. I may have the support from the people I've met on the internet over the course of time, which is great. But yeah, I don't have people to talk to locally, go and have coffee with in London and commiserate as we were doing. So,
So when you were looking at different job opportunities, you mentioned that you had that little bit of a runway. So it's not like you had the option to be a little bit more discerning about which opportunities you were pursuing.
yeah.
What sorts of things were you on the lookout for? What were some red flags and some green flags that you were aware of or became aware of?
Yeah. No callbacks is like, you know, if you have a really good conversation and then never hear anything, like, or you have to chase to like get a yes or no, that was really frustrating, and that's definitely a red flag. There were a couple, as I mentioned, where I was getting, you know, I felt like we had a great conversation, but then they recalibrated or seemingly recalibrated the job to be below my level, or like not going to work because it wasn't a good fit. So those were frustrating. What else? Yeah, I didn't feel like I was kind of being hoodwinked or like being taken for a ride too much in terms of the processes. I think the major challenges were just finding things that I felt I could get on board with. There are a couple of lines of tech that I'm just not interested in either going back to or like following along, being involved with. Just things I'm not interested in contributing to. So it felt really difficult to sort of turn those down just with that and be nice about it, without just saying no. Actually, I hate what you're doing and think it's wrong. I think that you know, I'm a people person, and I try to be nice and try to be respectful. So I think that some of those situations were tricky ones.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I feel really fortunate in that, fast forwarding to now, like at the beginning of March, I had the opportunity to get a full-time role at Mastodon. And frankly, I took a massive cut from where I was previously, but it's something that I feel genuinely strongly good about. And it's something where I've got a little bit of seniority, so I can share that knowledge with the people I'm working with and help them hopefully move forward as a team, as well as doing the thing I'm doing. Now I'm head of communications, and that is not a job title I would have expected myself to have. It's strictly non-technical. I mean, it's a media and comms role, but I'm a technical person, so I still want to write code. I still want to be giving people support and doing developer relations. And suddenly, I'm learning a load of new skills, like doing media interviews or arranging events or like setting up meetings for my C-level colleagues to do something specific to regulation or whatever. So it's quite different. But I'm grateful to have the opportunity, and I feel like I was waiting for it. So yeah, it's kind of strange.
Yeah, I think it seems like just a really cool transition, a natural transition from working at Twitter to go to Mastodon, but also more in line with your values. Something about your last question, Jason, when you were asking about any red flags or green flags. I would imagine you, Andy, coming off of that last role with a bit of runway and looking for a role, you want to find something that aligns with you value-wise.
Yeah.
And
the values thing is huge, Michael. It is like, it's really what I was saying about having changed a lot in those last 3 years. I think it's really been down to figuring out what my values, or understanding now what my life and like personal values are, and the things I want to do, and the things going back to that sort of lines of tech that I'm not interested in contributing to. I really understand more about what I feel good about doing, what my values are, and what I don't want to be contributing to. So yeah, but that's hard, because that's not always an easy path to riches and success and fame. But I feel good about what I'm doing, which I'm fortunate for.
That's really cool. And I think another thing that I thought of when you were talking about your job right now being not non-technical, I feel like a lot of folks out there have lay people like myself who aren't developers, maybe are intimidated by Mastodon in a way, or feel like it's more technical than it is. Is that something that you've found yourself sort of explaining to people, like, hey, it's really not that hard. It's explaining the network aspect of it. I think for someone in your position would be pretty interesting, because you have a technical background, but you can also talk to the lay people pretty well. So,
thanks. Yeah, I mean, the answer to the question is kind of, it's not difficult, it's different. And I think humans are lazy, and we like the things that we know, and we gravitate to things that look the same as the other thing that we were used to, because we're just bored, we're just tired, we don't have time, we don't have the energy, we don't have the mental activity to just say, right, I'm going to learn something new today. I'm going to go do this. It's going to mean that I have to make a change, and I'm going to maybe sacrifice some other stuff that's easier or better or different. But I'm going to learn something new today. And so, once you get over that hump, it becomes fun. It gets cool. It's interesting. It's nice. Going back to the values thing, I'm really worried about everybody just consuming the same streams of content that are controlled by someone else all the time, and that's a worrying direction for us. We're going way off topic in terms of like job hunting, but yeah, it is a topic that comes up all the time in my current role, for sure.
Right.
Well, and actually, to steer it kind of back on topic is, that's kind of one of the things that led to this podcast in the first place, was the fact that, the social media feeds around job searches seem to be filled with the same, shall we say, over-curated content that didn't really seem rooted in reality. Were there things that you were finding that, where you were just like, you were seeing like advice and stuff online, and you're just going, this is not what I'm seeing in reality?
LinkedIn is just ridiculous. It is just ridiculous. I suddenly found myself November, December 22 on LinkedIn watching my colleagues seemingly rapidly finding new roles, like talking up their new employer. And then LinkedIn itself, not just to the behaviors of the people on LinkedIn, but then LinkedIn itself started adding games and all kinds of other weird stuff, which is not like what you necessarily expect or want from a professional job seeking career growing network. It was just odd. And it's felt increasingly odd over the period of time. And look, I now operate 2 company pages on LinkedIn, one for Mastodon and one for my art studio, and I've got my own content there. And yeah, I mean, I think social, especially there, is very curated. Like you say, it's very shiny. It's look, here's my advice on how to get ahead, and or here's 12 things that I learned before breakfast yesterday. Weird, it is not what it started out as. It doesn't seem like it's ideal for presenting oneself and a resume, CV, set of skills, set of projects, like portfolio.
I sneezed 5 times here. Here's what it taught me about B2B sales.
Yes. Yes, and then you see the other interesting thing is my colleague I mentioned earlier, who was from our HR team, who kind of took us under her wing and taught us a bunch of stuff as we left the company and ran these workshops, was giving us LinkedIn workshops to teach us, like, the secrets of the algorithm, to like, don't put your link in the post, put your link in the comments, because otherwise your post won't hit the feed. It's like, seriously, what is going on here? This is not helpful to any of us, and it's just drains people. So, I think it's back to having genuine, authentic connections with people that helps really to move us forward.
Well, and I want to briefly add to that it scares me, the fact that LinkedIn is almost a non-negotiable in the job search anymore, because now it's almost like some aspect of the determination of whether or not you get a job is in the very opaque hands of a major corporation.
Yeah.
That's a little scary.
And it's not super well publicized who that corporation is. I mean, we remember who acquired it, Microsoft, but it's not really like obvious from the website if you're not familiar with that. Whether that or not that's a red flag is another matter. I mean, it seems like it's relatively lightly branded for a good reason, and I don't necessarily see it as like a big corporate evil reason. I just think that it's left to operate in a almost in a vacuum, or as it does its thing. But to me, that's what it seems like. But anyway, yeah, I find it frustrating. I definitely find it frustrating. So for those of you that are watching or listening who are frustrated with LinkedIn, yeah, I'm right there with you. We've got to be there. We're doing it. We're doing the thing. We're sharing the stuff. But it definitely feels like it's a little unlike reality most days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very spooky, yeah. So, do you have any remaining advice, anything we didn't cover that you'd like to share with anyone who's on the job market right now and looking?
So in my case, I think that, I did say I kind of waited, and I was fortunate I was able to wait to some extent. But while I was waiting, I've been doing a load of other things, which were growing the network, helping to demonstrate other values, and letting me learn about myself. And here's me sounding like I'm posting tomorrow morning's LinkedIn post. Here's what I learned while I was laid off. Yeah, look, be patient, keep at it. Go try some other stuff. Go contribute somewhere else. Go do a volunteer thing. Go write some, if you're a techie like me, go write some open source code and contribute somewhere. Those are things that have helped me, because they have helped me like make additional connections that I'm either now taking forward into my new role, or have just helped me feel more confident, feel more comfortable in myself, and understanding, what my values are. Going back to Michael's point, for me, it's been a lot about value alignment, and that's what I've learned a lot in the last couple of years. And watching my friends, I had a friend I used to work with at IBM back in the day who got laid off after 30 plus years in his role at an age older than me. Watching him go through that and then try and find his way back to employment has been really tough. And of course, he was coming to me for sort of support. So yeah, just be kind. I don't know that it's not easy because we easily get ground down by this stuff, but be kind. That's all I've got to share, really.
Take that advice all day. Stay true to your values and be kind. That is good stuff. So, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate just sharing your knowledge with us, and it's always good to speak with you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.